every AAA exam will include at least one, if not two or three, really difficult questions, things that you're just not sure how to answer. And when you turn to one of those questions, your reaction can be panic. And that's what the examiner is trying to get you to do. They're trying to throw you off course with a difficult question. What I want you to imagine when you hit that hard question is that the examiner has dug a hole in front of you, and you are stood in front of that hole. Now, the person without good exam technique, without training, will walk up to that hole and fall right into it. They'll not recover. When you get to a tough question, if you let it throw you off course and you throw yourself into the hole, then it can throw you for the entire exam because you don't really know how to answer it and you feel like your chances of passing have gone. And actually, what you really need to do is just walk around the hole. Realise that the hole has been dug for you by the examiner, but you can choose not to throw yourself in it. So how can you do that? How can you walk around the hole? Because you still need to answer the question. Well, this is the nightmare question that came up in the December 22 exam, right? It was question 1, part C. So for a lot of people, it was early on in the exam for them. And because it was difficult, they didn't know how to answer it. Well, they got really thrown off by it. They fell into the hole and never recovered. So when you hit a tough question, I want you to remember your training. I want you to remember this approach. The first thing we're thinking is, I just need to pick up a few marks. Right, there are 7 marks available here. To pass this exam paper, I don't need to get all 7. I just need to have a go, perhaps pick up a couple of marks, and then move on. So remember your training. In every question in AAA, we start by setting up an answer structure. And then we use the scenario information to generate an answer plan. And we then extend that answer plan out into a series of short, succinct, brief points, and then we move on. And we forget about this question. We don't let it throw us, and we don't let it knock us off course for the rest of the exam. So let's look at how we would do that for this particular question. So this question, I think, had 2 parts to it, 2 different requirements, 2 questions. The first was to discuss the impact on audit planning, and the second was to have a conclusion. So I start by setting myself up an answer structure that addresses both of those questions. So the impact on audit planning, and then a conclusion. And then I go into the scenario information, and I think, well, is there anything in here I can use to help me to generate points for my answer? And there's not much here. The only thing we're really told is that we're using a new service organisation to provide credit control functions. So how does using a new organisation impact my audit planning? Well, the first thing is I need to understand that new organisation. Are they any good? Are they competent? Do they have a good reputation? So that's the first thing in my plan. And then, well, if I'm going to be doing a lot of work on this service organisation rather than doing my normal testing over receivables, well, in my audit plan, well, I don't need to do some of that work that I would originally have been planning to do because those functions aren't performed by the company anymore. So I'm not going to do as much testing myself at the company. I'm going to be testing the service organisation instead. Part of that extra work I'm going to do is to test the controls at this service organisation. And for me to be able to do that, I might need to go out and visit that service organisation. And, well, who's going to need to do that? Well, it might need to be someone who's more experienced because this is new work. This isn't just following last year's audit file. And when might that work need to be done? Well, if I'm going to do more testing of controls, generally, I know from my experience, that's done up front, earlier in the audit, rather than during detailed field work. So that's going to impact when I'm going to need staff booked on this work. So my conclusion is I'm going to need to change the audit plan. I'm going to need more experienced people, and I'm going to need to plan to do this site visit, to visit the new service organisation. Can you see how I've really run with this? Not much information in the scenario, but I've really run with it. Now, not all of these points are going to score. All right. Some of them might be decent, some of them the examiner might agree with, and some of them they might not. So what I don't want to do is to spend a long time explaining each one. I want to keep each of my points brief because, well, they'll either score or they won't. And a trap that many students fall into when it's a question they don't really know the answer to is they end up writing really long answers. So here's my answer plan written up, and this is as much as I would have written, right? No more than this. They're a series of brief points because I know they'll either score or they won't. And if you want to read through these points fully, pause the recording here so that you can do so. But the thing I want you to notice is that each of them is really brief because I know that they'll either score or they won't. So I'm not going to waste much time writing loads and loads about each one. Each I'm just trying to bring back to the impact on audit planning. So the learning points for you. When you get to a tough question, do not panic. Everyone is going to find it difficult. You are supposed to find it hard, and your aim is to just pick up a few marks. So start by setting up an answer plan and develop that answer plan into short, ideally relevant points. But the main thing is that they're short so you don't waste much time and you can move on to perhaps some of the easier questions in the exam paper where you can score more marks and you haven't wasted much time here. I hope you found this useful. If you want to get more of my resources, subscribe to my YouTube channel.